You know, after living through Hurricane Helene and Milton last year in the Tampa Bay area, a lot of people are asking themselves, how do we make wise real estate investments in a world where storms are just, well, they're part of life here in Florida? With my background being in natural resources policy, this topic of climate resiliency is very interesting to me, and I'm passionate about helping people navigate these questions when buying or selling real estate. And so I've been diving deep into the data to help with answers to this question because that's what I do, right? Looking what actually happened to property values, what features really protected homes, and most importantly, how can we identify properties that are built to last? Many people who live here have questioned whether or not it's still good for them long term to rebuild and stay. Many other people had dreams of living on or near the water in the future, and storms can cause some people to shy away from those dreams. But with a thoughtful approach to mitigate or anticipate risks, those dreams can still become or remain reality. It's critical that our homes fit with both the built and the natural environment. I'm Roy Filial, and if you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in Tampa Bay real estate, this is the conversation we need to have. Let me start with what the data actually shows us. For this purpose, we'll focus on single-family homes since they generally are the most susceptible to floodwaters, being that many of our condo units are all off of the first level. After Helene and Milton, we saw some interesting patterns emerge in our market. When looking at the average sold price of waterfront single-family homes, there was a decline between September to January in the averages. However, we've already seen some rebounding with average prices in 2025 for waterfront properties. This also accounts for many properties being sold in as-is condition for land value. We saw big declines in some average prices in neighborhoods post-storm because those properties were being sold for the value of the land for people to rebuild. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this goes back to what I always tell my clients about being analytical in your approach. The properties that took the biggest hit weren't simply the ones in higher risk flood areas. They were the ones that hadn't been constructed or updated to current building standards. So when we look at the numbers from 2024 versus 2023, you might see headlines about declining property values in certain areas. But if you dig deeper, you'll see that the decline was primarily properties that had flood damage or were perceived as high risk. The resilient properties, they're still in high demand. And so what makes a property resilient? This isn't about being scared of living here. This is about being smart about how we invest. The first thing I look at with my clients now is elevation. It's important to understand base flood elevation, or BFE. BFE is the elevation that floodwaters are expected to reach during a 100-year flood event, an event that has 1% chance of occurring in any given period. Properties that are elevated, whether naturally or through construction, pose lower risks and are more resilient for homeowners. Second is construction standards. When I'm showing a property now, I'm looking at things like impact windows, roofing, framing or exterior material, property drainage systems. And here's something most people don't think about: backup power systems. Properties with whole house generators or solar with battery backups, they're in higher demand because buyers understand the value of staying comfortable and connected during outages. The third thing is understanding the broader infrastructure resilience of the neighborhood. How do the streets perform during heavy rains or tidal events? Are you going to be able to get out of your neighborhoods anytime you need to? Also, what current projects does the city have to invest in the infrastructure of these areas? These factors affect not just your daily life, but your property's long-term value. Now let's talk about the financial side, because this is where being analytical in our approach really pays off. Insurance costs, and I think we all know this, they've gone up significantly. But here's what's most important to remember. Properties with resilient features qualify for better insurance rates through discounts. For example, if you're looking at a property with impact windows, proper elevation, and updated electrical systems, you will pay less in insurance premiums compared to a similar property without these features. And so when we're running the numbers on a property, because I always run the numbers with my clients, we're not just looking at the purchase price. We're looking at the total cost of ownership over time. And here's where it gets really interesting from an investment perspective. It's difficult to quantify the difference in average price of homes that are built or retrofitted to current standards in the marketplace. The levels of upgrades, Construction standards, elevation, and other factors vary widely from property to property. However, a recent FEMA study stated that homes that have been retrofitted or fortified sell for roughly 7% more than those that have not been upgraded to current standards. Although it's difficult to accurately compare the average price of homes with different resilient features, the demand that I see for those from the consumer is high, as you would expect. The sellers are able to sell their lower risk homes at a premium, and the buyer also has a better protected investment. After Hurricane Helene, many homeowners were faced with difficult decisions: restore, rebuild, lift their homes, or often sell for a discount even to land value. The 50% rule came into play in situations where homes were considered to be substantially damaged. Homes with repairs that would exceed costs of 50% of the structure's pre-storm value would be required to be rebuilt to current standards. This put many homeowners in the toughest of situations. The cost of these decisions and path to get back on their feet were high for a lot of homeowners. And so if you're thinking about this as a long-term investment, whether that be your primary residence or an investment property, the properties that are built to current standards or retrofitted to withstand the tough conditions are going to be the best for the consumer. But here's the thing, and I always tell my clients this: no one can assure you there will be no storms or there will be no damage from environmental factors. However, as a consumer, you need someone who understands what to look for and who can help you make informed decisions to help mitigate risks and to protect your investment. At the end of the day, we're not just buying houses. We're making investments in our future. Some parts of the Tampa Bay area almost get a bad rap because of their historical flood risks. However, it's important to be familiar with the neighborhoods at a more granular level. I had dear friends and clients last year go under contract in what many consider a high flood risk neighborhood just before the two storms. However, we did our due diligence. We compared elevation, we talked with neighbors, and made every effort to get all of the information available. The home survived both storms with no water intrusion. A couple of streets over, we're not as fortunate. No one can guarantee or 100% eliminate risk. However, it's important to evaluate everything to reduce risks. And look, I'm not here to scare anyone about living in Florida. I love it here. Many people do, which is why Florida currently ranks second in the country for population growth. But I think we owe it to ourselves to be smart about how we invest in real estate. Smart investing is about understanding what the data tells us about the future. If you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in the Tampa Bay area, and you want someone who's going to analyze the numbers, the construction, and the location, who's going to help you understand what resilience actually means for your investment, let's have a conversation. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about buying a house, it's about building wealth through smart, resilient real estate choices. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.